Thank you for joining me for my first episode of Season 3. Today I am talking to educator Dr. Angela Valenzuela, who is a professor at my alma mater, the University of Texas at Austin.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
In our conversation today, Dr. Valenzuela shares with us her work with Academia Cuauhtli, a partnership model within the Austin Independent School District and the M.S. Barrientos Mexican American Cultural Center that elevates education within the Latino community. Listen to learn how this program, entering its 9th year of operation, is developing 4th and 5th grade students whose parents are of immigrant and working class backgrounds. Dr. Valenzuela shares how this program is also a part of a larger Grow Your Own Educator movement that creates pathways into the teaching profession and helps retain bilingual dual language teachers, a policy issue that is so pressing today. Dr. Angela Valenzuela is a professor at the University of Texas at Austin in both the Cultural Studies in Education program within the Department of Curriculum and Instruction and the Educational Policy and Planning program within the Department of Education Leadership and Policy, where she also serves as the director of the Texas Center for Education Policy. Dr. Valenzuela has also founded and operates an education blog entitled Educational Equity, Politics, and Policy in Texas. Enjoy our conversation and see show notes for more information about Dr. Valenzuela, Academia Cuauhtli, and her blog. As always, make sure you subscribe to the Empowerment Zone podcast and give us a rating on Apple Podcast. Your support will ensure that we continue our journey in empowerment and impact. Hi, Dr. Angela Valenzuela. Welcome to the Empowerment Zone.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here and to reconnect with you.
Yes, I'm very excited about having you on the Empowerment Zone, being a Tejana, native of my state, Texas, and I also understand you're from San Angelo. I didn't know that until today. As you know, I'm from Brownwood, Texas, which is not too far from San Angelo. And so I'm delighted to have you on for several reasons. One, because you are an educator and also an educator activist, it's really great to have a scholar activist on the show to really talk about your research and your work in the community. Also, I'm eager to discuss with you the school that you have founded in order to establish ethnic studies in the public school systems in Texas. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here. And yeah, Brownwood's just around the corner. Yeah, I have a picture of just how connected we are in ways that I hadn't really considered previously. That's really cool. Yeah, so I'm from West Texas. I grew up there, went to school there, and it was such an important part of my formation. And as a young person, it was also experiencing the Mexican American civil rights movement, and of course the African American civil rights movement and the women's movement, the anti-war movement. It seems like as I was growing up at an age that was so impressionable to me in middle school, it stayed with me and really has shaped who I have become as a person and a scholar.
So, what are some of those experiences? I'm very curious that shaped you as a young person growing up in San Angelo.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. Yeah, my grandfather was a minister, and he was involved in civil rights way back in the 50s, and he helped, for example, to desegregate the river in my hometown. And also public establishments like restaurants and hotels. He was from Mexico, and so he had a really different frame of reference and just really just didn't understand West Texas and Jim Crow and just found it so objectionable. And then as a minister, he had that power, right, to be able to stand up and resist the discrimination that was systemic and overt and toxic in those days. And I feel like, I mean, he in tandem with other members of the community, but especially the clergy, he lived that and helped bring the signs down. No Mexicans or dogs allowed signs, and also to integrate the public establishments. Which was important and amazing and influential, but also I think very scarring, all of that. And not just for him and my grandmother that had to live this, but my parents. And I mean, they're fine, but it was one of those memories that was very, just very, very influential, even just on a day-to-day basis. And in understanding that civil rights is never fully accomplished, but it's like democracy. It's something that each generation has to rediscover for itself. And so that's been really, really defining in terms of my own formation, and wanting to make sure that these histories and these stories are not only never lost, but that the counter narratives of the real empowerment or the potential for empowerment that is there within our communities is something that we can all access with greater consciousness, right? With the kind of consciousness that I would hope schools would promote. But since they often don't do that, I am particularly drawn to efforts that illuminate those histories, but also bring forward empowering narratives of what our communities are and what they can do to overcome systemic racism and sexism and homophobia and classism and just all these things that are just so harmful to our communities.
And that's a great segue. As an educator, you really work as an activist as well, really supporting the community. Can you tell us a little bit about your work in the community and the school that you have formed there in Austin?
Yeah, I think when we first met, I was in Houston, and I was writing a book, Subtractive Schooling, and I just wanted to understand how it is that we in the Mexican American working class get reproduced in ways that are harmful and disempowered. Like what is that process? And so key to my analysis was this idea that the fullness of who we are as members of our communities, with our cultures, languages, our community-based identities, with our stories, our histories, it's not present. None of that is present in our K-12 schools. And we consider that absence, which is a structured absence, as actually normal. And we don't even question it, although, clearly as a scholar and a public intellectual, I do question that and have always aligned with movements within the academy and in our communities that have also questioned that. And the 60s, I think, was a real opening for African American studies, Mexican American studies, Asian American studies, and Native American studies, and Puerto Rican studies. And it remained dormant for a while. And so I felt like I was a bit just kind of back in Houston, trying to get my ground game as I was like elaborating this critique and kind of trying to envision next steps going forward. hoping for a movement, but I guess one lives long enough sometimes to see some things come to fruition. And so that's been very, just very, very fulfilling to see that the younger generations and the current one as well, the people my age with children and grandchildren in the schools being deeply concerned about their children and grandchildren not being reflected in textbooks and curriculum and pedagogy, much less in the teacher workforce itself. And we can add to this the lack of representation of faculty of color in higher education as a continuing, a very serious problem that we must address from a policy issue, from a policy perspective.
And so, what are some of those solutions that you, being an educator and being in higher education? I'm just curious, what are some of the suggestions, policy suggestions, do you have in order to increase the number of Mexican American, Latino, Latina educators in not only the public school system, but also in higher education?
So there's all kinds of things that need to be happening right now. There are good proposals on the table. If we're just talking about, diversifying the teacher workforce in K-12 education, we can grow our own educators. We can promote community people who might be teacher aides and provide funding for them to become our children's teachers. And what the research shows about those kinds of teachers is that they stay in education because they stay in their communities. And I think also to promote teachers of color because and not just like one but in cohorts, so that there's that kind of camaraderie and solidarity, that sense of protection within schools, so that's not token, but it's really meaningful kinds of inclusion. And these kinds of teachers get empowered. We need resources. We need debt forgiveness for teachers who can commit to some number of being a teacher in schools, with either debt forgiveness or like policies that actually fund and they pay for teachers' tuition, so that pre-service teachers, so that they can go back and teach in our children's schools and our community schools. What we can also do is diversify higher education, because we know that a lot of people come through teacher preparation programs, and if our programs themselves are not sensitive to issues of diversity and the importance of it, and they're not critical of education in a way that's constructive and helpful, that brings in ways of knowing and ways of being that would actually be very, very helpful to education, then it's going to be real difficult. If we don't diversify higher education, it's going to be very difficult to diversify K-12 schooling. And I'm not just talking about brown bodies, black and brown bodies. I'm talking about the actual curriculum in higher education. And I don't see that happening, coming back to community, without people like ourselves also being involved in community. If you're involved in community, you know what communities seek, what they want, what they desire, and there'll be differences that we have to be attentive to. So, I mean, teaching a child of color it can sound more simple than it is, but you're talking about all kinds of differences by race, by class, by identity. Some children are newly arrived, right? And they would be different. You would teach differently. Or some are indigenous or Afro-Indigenous or Afro-Latino. And so are we being inclusive of these identities in our curriculum and our pedagogy? These are questions that we must always ask as teachers in not just K-12 spaces, but at the college level always, so that we can always improve our instruction and make schools not just meaningful and relevant, but truly exciting for young people coming through.
You're so right. Curriculum is important. It's not just about having African American, Latino, Latina, Indigenous, Asian American teachers. It's also about what you teach. What is a part of your core curriculum? And I know you have been involved in the movement to uh, put ethnic studies within public school systems. I'm curious, what are some of the arguments you and other scholars and activists have made to ensure to educate, the State Department of Education and others and the public who may have been against this infusion of ethnic studies into the curriculum? What arguments have you made to them to get them to understand the importance of ethnic studies?
Yeah. So um, I think what works for policymakers is to show them the evidence that it contributes to the very educational outcomes
Mm.
about which they care, right? And we're talking about higher academic achievement, about is an antidote to absenteeism in K-12 schools. It promotes college access and actually going into college. And I the reason for all of that is because the ethnic studies movement, it is primarily at the college level. So when you provide a college level curriculum to, let's say, high school youth, they can, many of them for the first time in their lives, see that they are college material, even though all the signals that they're getting otherwise is that they're not. Because they don't have, in their own backgrounds and histories, that experience of their parents, for example, going to college. And so when they're constructed as, unfortunately, from a deficit perspective, or as less than, then the risk is that youth can internalize those messages, and they have to really fight against them. And it's hard without the fortitude, the emotional, psychological, and particularly the intellectual fortitude that comes from a curriculum that provides them with the knowledge and the skills that they need to navigate the very educational spaces that they're in K-12 schools, but also at the college level.
So once you make these arguments, have you found that the Department of Education in Texas and other people who may have formerly been opposed or ignorant to the value of ethnic studies, do you feel like you've been able to bring them to your side, or do you feel like you get a lot of pushback, or a combination of the two?
Yeah, I think we've the proof is in the pudding. We were able to pass in 2016 elective courses in ethnic studies. And by that, I mean African American, Native American, Asian American, and Mexican American studies. It was not easy. It was a battle that began in 2013. And it was on the heels of the dismantling of Mexican American studies in the Tucson Unified School District. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of us who saw what was happening in Arizona, this was before Trump got elected, we knew it was coming our way. And so we decided that the best defense is a good offense. And so that's what we started. And by we, I'm referring to the National Association for Chicana and Chicano Studies, TEJASFOCO, which is an organization that's statewide and that convenes regularly to have summits and conferences and also strategy meetings to get initiatives like this passed. Last session, and then in an earlier session, I think in 2015, we had actual legislation that would have made ethnic studies law in the state of Texas. And it would have enabled pathways into ethnic studies that lead to high school graduation with A and B parts to it at the high school level. That was Cristina Morales from Houston, who carried the legislation, House Bill 1504. She will carry that forward again in the next legislative session that will begin in January 2023, the one that's coming in January. So it'd be great for people to stay tuned to that. I know they're in Houston. Tony Diaz is a big advocate works closely with her on this. We all work together. He's part of our Knox Tejas Focal community. And we also were able to pass at the local level, we being those of us associated with our Saturday school, Academia Cuauhtli, that means Eagle Academy in Nahuatl, And we were able to pass as a community-based organization, ethnic studies in AISD, so that now it's taught at the high school level I understand every high school within the district. And so there's a lot of opportunity at the local district level. You do need your champions in the school district and on the school board. I would hope that we could rely on our Mexican American and African American school board administrators organizations to advance the cause. I do see this happening within MASBA. More needs to be done because it's not getting taught throughout the state when it could get taught. I know that there's this also conservative reactionary movement against the teaching of critical race theory. And it is what it is. But we certainly, as Mexican American studies or African American studies that are now TEKS aligned, we haven't been officially shut down. That would be something to be vigilant about. I don't see that happening, though. In fact, what we're witnessing is the development right now of TEKS standards. Those are the educational standards in both Native American studies and Asian American studies. And there's a lot of excitement around that. So, I think we're more ahead than we are behind. And even though we hear all the bad news, I think Texas and the world needs to also hear the good news that we really are making progress. And I'm so excited about that.
That's a good praise report to hear that you are receiving support in Texas. So, you mentioned the school, Cuauhtli School, Cuauhtli School in Austin. Can you tell us more about it? In fact, give us all the juicy details on how it got started, what you actually do, how you're supporting the public school system, and why that school is so important to Austin.
Yeah, I think to talk about Cuauhtli and its origins, I'd have to go back to the National Latino Education Research and Policy Project, NELRAP, and I'm the executive director of that. And we had we're a group of faculty, mostly in teacher preparation in colleges of education, who are Latinx nationwide, and we're Puerto Rican, we're Mexican American primarily, and we got foundation funding to stimulate projects throughout the country, and so those projects exist. We're one of those, so we have 10 member institutions, and the goal of NELRAP was to create pathways into the teaching profession for teachers of color. So grow your own pathways is definitely one policy arena to support. And so that's like, the granular work of working with community, perhaps with community-based organizations to bring either like kids in high schools or maybe who are in Future Teacher of America programs to come in to enroll in college and to receive the mentoring that they need until they get certified, with the idea that they go back into their communities to teach. So mostly that's envisioned as pathways from either like from high school into the university, or from the paraprofessional ranks, like I mentioned earlier, the teacher aide ranks into the university. But Cuauhtli took on a different approach. And I learned about how to do this from that work, and how to establish partnerships, memoranda of understanding with participating entities. And it's very situated in like the local context, what exactly those partnerships are. So for example, in Wisconsin, you have the, like what comes out of this work is Milwaukee MPS College. And so that's like its own institute that is certifying future bilingual education teachers in Milwaukee, so that you can bring MPS into the actual community spaces, drawing from community-based paraprofessionals and educators. In our context, we didn't know quite how it would work starting at the elementary school. Of course, this grand vision always was that we would promote, more teachers in the teaching profession. But since it's at the elementary level and a lot happens along the way for children, it's not an automatic connect, right? It's not going to just pan out in that way. But what has panned out just so gloriously is that the young people that have come through, that have been volunteers or coordinators at Academia Cuauhtli, they have gone on to enroll in the doctoral program at UT, either in curriculum instruction or education policy and planning, which is my main appointment. I also have a leg in curriculum and instruction, but my main appointment is in policy and planning with I think it's maybe 2 that have gone on to be professors in higher ed institutions, and several on the way.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a number that have come through the master's program that they're still in public schools, but they have master's degrees. And so we're able to promote, internally within the community, so that we can increase the number, frankly, of PhDs and master's students in higher ed, who are very much committed, deeply committed to expanding the community cultural wealth of our communities, so that we can inspire new generations of young people to come. We serve 4th and 5th graders from a number of schools. In the span of 9 years, we're entering our 9th year. We are now going to this year expand into 5 after-school programs that will offer our curriculum. Our curriculum is anchored in civil rights, in anti-racism, and it's indigenous. We have danza mexica. We have Aztec dance, which doesn't mean dance, but ceremony. We're anti-colonial, very focused on identity, and not just like what we understand maybe casually, popularly as being Latina, Latino, or Mexican American, but how we're also Afro-Indigenous and we're Afro-Latino, and we need to cultivate this kind of enhanced, broadened understanding of who we are. We're very mixed, we're all mixed as peoples, and we need to appreciate and honor that complexity. So that's evolved in time and with the times. And I feel very excited about our curriculum and just how much the teachers are taking it up and teaching in their own classrooms, actually, not just in what we're projecting for the fall in terms of the after school programs, but they're actually taking it up. We've been able to prepare around 250 teachers locally in the curriculum, and mostly in the bilingual dual language program. And we're able to impact, practice by through the partnership with the school district, making it available. It's in English and Spanish to every single teacher that wants to offer it district-wide. And so we're a go-to place for, this curriculum that's, very organic. It's very situated in our community. It's a working class. It's very vulnerable. It's largely immigrant, Spanish speaking. And that's like a lot of our kids. That's a big demographic that's mostly vulnerable and the target of ICE raids, and it's the target of gentrification that we have to hold on to, that we have to be responsive to, and be sensitive to, because schools make assumptions about parents that actually don't always hold true.
So true.
They don't always hold true. And if you're not on the ground, like working in this granular way with parents, and just being in conversation with them, you won't know exactly what their needs are. So there's a lot more pieces to this. Another is we call it the collaborative, and so that involves a budding partnership with people at the University of Oaxaca in Benito Juarez, Oaxaca. And so that is to deepen our own understanding of indigeneity. And then lastly, we have we just finished our Aztec Kids Code summer camp, and so we had over 30 kids, I believe, and the students were doing coding and doing games, and then monetizing their games in the morning, and then in the afternoon they were doing ceremony, danza mexica. And so it really just resonates. What can I say? It resonates. At first we were concerned whether people would like it, whether they would like us. And so what we framed this not as like bilingual education. It's not. I mean, we don't teach Spanish, we teach in the language. And our children are within the bilingual programs, in AISD, bilingual dual language programs. But really, it's a cultural revitalization initiative. We need to revitalize our languages and our cultures and be asset-based, and really like turn the narrative around, like I was sharing earlier, to view our community from an asset-based perspective, with all this incredible community cultural wealth that absolutely needs to be tapped into in order for our schools to be exciting places for our children and youth.
Well, congratulations on your work in education and your work with Cuauhtli. That is just really good to see that you're having that kind of impact in the community, as well as seeing how you affirm young people. A lot of young people, especially those who don't have access to cultural and affirming aspects of identity, have a challenge with confidence and self assurance and wanting to really fulfill their highest potential. So, what would you say is your biggest achievement from the school? I know you've had so many, so if you could say what is one thing you're happy about in terms of the results and accomplishments, what would you say?
I think the biggest achievement is to create a space that inspires, that motivates, that nurtures, because that is so lacking. And it came into focus in particular for us during the pandemic, when things started to shut down, and and we continued our work. And I think what crystallized for all of us was just how much we all needed each other. I mean, as faculty, as volunteers from the community, elders, as undergraduate and graduate student volunteers, our coordinators, project manager. We were able to, because of the trusting relationships that we've been able to cultivate over all of these years, I felt that it helped us to like almost even accelerate the response to the needs of our community in their time of need. The teachers in particular who are affiliated with us told us that they would have left public education had it not been for us. And beneath that, we had teachers that just couldn't teach also at night, and helping, even if they did for like many days at a time, very painstakingly, to get kids online on Chromebooks. You have a community that didn't, and still does not, because of the digital inequities that exist, have computers or have a background with computers and know what even a page was, or a tab, a space bar. I mean, all of that was like a foreign language. And so we were able to bring, again, because of having been in the schools, having evolved this relational ecology, as we call it. It's like there's like a lot of us involved. It's a relational, and the trust that comes with that. We were able to be responsive, pretty much immediately, as things like began to tumble down in those first weeks and months of the pandemic. It was hard, and we got a window into the difficulties, in particular, again, for our bilingual dual language teachers. I mean, with all frankness, the school district, we had asked them for digital equity kinds of resources. They didn't have it. They didn't have a person. They didn't have it. And so then we had to go and get resources and people to work one-on-one with the parents to make them as proficient as possible, understanding that the main idea was to have them access the internet. And it wasn't even just for curriculum, but it was for COVID information and responses. And then the city of Austin didn't do this in Spanish, and we were able to also use this information to get them to provide more resources in Spanish. And it was never what it needed to be, but at least we were a vehicle for all the way through for helping young people get the instruction they needed, their parents be connected, and actually provide real resources to keep them from getting evicted. And I think in one fundraiser, we raised well over $50,000, probably closer to $60,000. That was, like cash money that went straight to them to avoid evictions. We didn't lose a parent during the pandemic. We did not lose a single parent. We had 40 families that we felt responsible to and for, that we got very close to, and that we still very much feel close to. I think they're all kind of moving. We've been with them for 2 years. We held on to them because of the pandemic, because we got close and we were able to do that. We have that flexibility as a community-based organization. And I just think we have so much to be not only proud of, but just so thankful for, because of a community that demonstrated that really deep, authentic love and caring.
So, Dr. Angela Valenzuela, I know you're a big advocate for higher education, and I would like to know what your strategy for success would be if you were advising students who are in college. But first, could you please give us the name of the college or colleges that you have attended, your major or majors, and your degrees, and then what strategy would you provide students to ensure that they're successful in college?
Yeah, thank you. I got a bachelor's degree in English and a Spanish minor in my hometown, Evangelo State University. From there, I went to the University of Texas and I got a degree in sociolinguistics. I was interested in language and power and society, and it was a master's. From there, I got a master's degree in sociology at the University of California, Riverside. And then from there, I got a master's in sociology at Stanford University and I followed up with a PhD there at Stanford with a PhD in sociology. And I think the best piece of advice that I can give is, for you to find those human resources, those mentors that that can help you with your questions, and that you can get close to, with whom you might align in terms of your interests, because at the end of the day, it's people that are going to be the gatekeepers to your profession, and also just the providers of real support. You might feel that you shouldn't bother us professors, but hey, that's what we're here for. Bother us. That's why they pay us, and that's why we are in the profession to begin with. At least I would hope that most of us would be in that, would share that sentiment, because we care for young people, and I know that when people around me have succeeded, I enjoy that. I celebrate that. I love being part of others' successes and others' stories. But the key is to find those individuals in your network. And I mean, sometimes it's like an email out of the blue. I would do my research beforehand and maybe read a little bit about them. Most of us are, we have identities on the web, and you can learn about us and kind of make your connection and your outreach to them meaningful and substantive, and that will impress someone like me, and make me want to just open the world to you in as much as I can.
Great advice. Identify the human resources you need to support your growth and your work. And one of those relationships is with your professors who would be glad to support you. And don't feel any kind of pause about contacting people you don't know. That because sometimes they will, many times actually, they will support your inquiries. Thank you so much, Dr. Valenzuela. It was great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song. NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.